Okay, folks, I'll give people a couple minutes to trickle in. Okay, sorry about that. The shutdown button on my computer is very finicky. Okay, hey folks. So I think as usual, if anybody wants to introduce themselves because they're new here and want to just introduce the rest of the group, please feel free to come off mute and do so now.
Hi, this is, I think, my first time joining a SIG-Testing meeting. So nice to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Madhav. I am here primarily wearing my SIG Contrabex hat and wanted to talk about a few things with you all today. Thanks for having me again.
Welcome. Cool. All right, I think seeing nobody else come up, Madhav, I think you have the first item on the agenda as well. So if you want to go ahead with that.
Yeah, so I wanted to sort of stop by and try and discuss a few ways that we can try and, like revive the granular approval feature for the approved plugin. So for those who aren't aware of this, in the 1.23 release timeframe, there was a feature worked on for the approval plugin, which supports granular approval. So right now, the way PRs are approved is you do /approve, and that is sort of like a blanket approval, and that approves all files um, in a subdirectory, basically. So what granular approval lets you do is you can approve individual files, and then the approval plugin then sort of checks if all the requisite files are approved by the required owners or not. And this sort of is an extension to the approval plugin, and now this functionality sits behind a feature gate as part of the PR. There were a few demos which were done at SIG-Testing meetings a while back, but considering that this is a significant change, like significantly large change, I think the PR is about 5,000 lines of code addition, like 5,000 lines added. So it's not too easy to review as well. Because of that, things sort of dropped off from there. But having this now in the community would be really, really helpful for multiple reasons as well. So I wanted to try and understand what could be done as next steps to sort of try and revive this. So I know that reviewer bandwidth is tight. So I basically wanted to hear your thoughts on like what could be potential next steps. I know a few folks here have already tried to review the PR already when it was created. So thank you for that. Maybe your inputs also are like super valuable here.
Cool. Anybody want to join on comment? I'll give people a bit of time to look at some of the linked things as well from the notes if you need.
Do we have specific use cases that we know that we want this for? I'm kind of curious how important this is to achieve. I'm pretty sure we could probably achieve this in specific cases today by putting files into subdirectories if we expect them to need granular approval. It's not really on the fly, but I'm just kind of wondering how important this is to implement.
Yeah, that's a fair question. So from the use case perspective, one important use case now would be that, at least from talking from like the Kubernetes perspective, right now, especially what tends to happen is that a lot of PRs tend to get like blanket approvals from like either root owners or like a parent subdirectory owner. We could move the owner's files into like more granular subdirectories so that those can then go ahead and get approved. But there is also still the case of blanket approvals coming in, which this plugin does not override. Like that functionality still remains. But I don't have a concrete answer for like, is this something that we really want to do? I will get back to you on that for sure. I will start a thread and like include the relevant folks who started the effort back then, so that we can firstly gauge if this is still needed or not, and if it is, then like figure out a way forward. So that sounds okay.
Yeah, Cole, if you want to direct and then Ben.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds helpful. I do think it could be a little bit challenging to, determine how important any of these kinds of things are. But yeah, some insight into that would be helpful, I feel like.
So, sounds good. I'll take that up. Thank you, Cole.
So I would say that like all the aspects of the existing functionality in the open pull request are things that we would really like, and that I've observed use cases for constantly. Being able to specify what you're approving is done informally as a ad hoc social contract right now, where you say like approve and then for whatever, like on a line below you say like for like hack directory, but like it would be much better if automation could enforce this. It means that people with a lot of permissions are hesitant to approve when they're on like multi-faceted PRs. For example, the root approvers in Kubernetes will sometimes like be asked to bring their expertise to a particular issue, but they would have maybe delegated on some other aspect of the PR. I see that a lot. And right now there's like once they give approve, it approves the whole PR, and there's no way for them to like downscope their approval. And the granular approve pattern matching would let us delegate files that can't be moved, like go mod and go sum. We have a dependency review team in Kubernetes, and we can't move those files because Go won't let you symlink them. And they need to be in the root of the module, which is the repo root. But if we grant you directory permission over the repo root, that's the whole project. I think there's a few other use cases like that, or we could stop needing to rely on symlinks in other places. Right now, the way that we have people that can improve the build system in Kubernetes is everything about the build that needs to be in the top level is symlinked from some lower directory. And for example, symlinks don't work well when you try to clone Git on Windows, things like that. They'd both be really helpful for Kubernetes at least.
Yeah, for the Go mod thing, I can definitely see the use case there. I think there's more useful or more interesting ways that we could address that. Like if we had regular expression-based owners files and stuff like that, that would also be helpful there. But yeah, I could totally see what all the points you made are really good like that. I think yeah, it seems pretty clear that that's really important for us to implement then.
We actually at some point attempted this, and it's like it's already configured in the owner's file as like a regular expression or glob. I can't remember. I believe PR, that's what the PR implements now, is like you should be able to regex and say like these people can own these files.
Yeah, it implements
that's what we're
things.
Sorry, we're talking about using regular expressions now? I thought that was a separate effort compared to the granular approvals.
The pull request does both, according to the description.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was originally rewriting approve into just like a second take plugin. It was approved to, and then we had some discussions here in this meeting, and we decided that we asked them to just like put it behind like a config option, the new code paths, instead of a whole new plugin. I think we were thinking like the diff would be smaller, something like that. But yeah, it does both.
Putting myself on stack, but is this the so I understand the PR feature is guarded, but also the PR is large, so review might be difficult. Is this something where if there is reasonable review that this works correctly, it might be easy enough to just test that this works on some smaller repos and then start gradually rolling it out?
So one of the recordings that I've linked, so Aaron talks about what the order of rolling out would preferably be. So it would start off with, so I think Ben recommended kind as the first repo to roll this out to. And then second repo would be test infra because of high traffic. And then third would be K community, and then either KK and then org wide. So if we do have enough proof that this sort of works correctly, we can try rolling it out to kind and see how things go from there. But considering that this has not been reviewed for a while, I think it would instill a little more confidence if we could have one more pass of reviews before getting a +1 or a go ahead to sort of see where we can go from there.
The package is also pretty well unit tested and mature, and it's mostly just like logic changes to support instead of directories, the paths or like the additional comment format, and those are like feature gated that we can roll out per repo.
Yeah, there are a few things in the PR that need to be changed to like get it in a mergeable state, like getting rid of Bazel files and all of that. I think post that, we can probably see if we can roll that out to one of the repos and see how it works out. If that's okay.
Yeah, I think besides review, the main I don't think the approved plugin's been touched much, so it should just need we've deleted Bazel since then, so it should be a pretty light rebase, hopefully.
Sounds good. Okay, so just to make sure that like I don't miss out on anything, I'll make sure that the PR gets in a mergeable state. So like there are a few linting errors and removal of basic files and all of that. After getting that done, let me sort of ping you all on SIG-Testing Slack again, and then sort of take it from there if that sounds okay.
How feasible do you think maybe to make it easier for review, we can like break it into like break apart the two features or something?
By two features, do you mean
like the new approve command format and the support for regex?
Okay, yeah, that's a reasonable suggestion. Let me note that down. Thank you.
I think the code changes are interlinked, but still, if we could like downscope it into like 2 commits or 2 PRs or something like that, might help.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Putting self in stack again as well. Is this something where, like, for instance, I don't have deep crowd knowledge, so I can't speak to like making sure that this fits well with like the existing stuff in the approved plugin or whatnot, but I can review for like Go language, for instance. Would that potentially be helpful? Or probably just leave it for expert?
Yeah, that would.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. I think we're just talking over each other, but I was going to say this shouldn't require proud knowledge, really. This should be pretty well scoped.
Okay.
Yeah, since it's extending the existing plugin, all the skeleton for like receiving stuff from GitHub and that sort of thing is already like implemented. It just needs to support an additional command text format and the logic for the regex files that it's like entirely config and logic changes. And tests.
Are there any operational concerns that?
Did we keep?
I'm sorry, please go ahead.
I just had a quick question. Did we keep the existing unit tests? Are those all carried over? Sorry, could you hear me? No. I was asking if we kept the existing unit tests. Did we carry those over?
Yeah, because most of the code is in a new sub package of approve. And yeah, it looks like it should be carrying over the tests and just adding more.
Cool. I mainly asked that because we have pretty good test coverage there, so we should have good confidence in things if all of that is still working.
Yeah, a huge portion of this diff is the tests.
The tests almost have, yeah, they're almost too specific in most cases. So, but they have good coverage. So I think we have good confidence if those are all working.
Yeah. So the main approve package, there are a few tests added there, but I don't see any tests being modified or deleted to sort of adapt for this change. Not sure if my internet is back.
Right. Any other questions on this or
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
see? All right. I am. So I think Rajas and someone else also has the. Oh, I'm guessing Patrick. Okay.
Be someone else is me. Hello.
Hi. Whoever wants to present for the next one, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I can start because I'm the one who suggested doing this. I started out experimenting with enhancing our pre-merge linting process because the current linting configuration for Golang CI lint for entry code is fairly limited. Our code is pretty bad in some areas. We certainly could do better and ask more from our developers when they add new code, even before we fix the existing code. I have a PR pending that does that stricter linting, but my observation is that if we were to enable that, it would be a pretty bad experience, in particular for novice users, the ones that are most likely to benefit from good linter annotations for their new code, because they would have to figure out what this brow job is about that is failing, where to find the log output, correlate the text description of the failure with the changes that they are making. And there's a much better interface for that, and that's the GitHub annotations for your PR, where GitHub immediately next to the code that it's complaining about shows what's wrong with it. And that's what I would like to see enabled before we turn on this stricter linting that I've been working on. So at KubeCon, first of all, I think on Slack, I asked about that. And then at KubeCon Europe, I asked around. I attended the presentation about Prow at KubeCon EU, and together we came up with some kind of approach, and Rajas then showed up at KubeCon EU and said that he will be able to work on this. And that's where we are. I think he hasn't done much, but I can let him talk about that. Rajas, do you want to describe the approach that we settled on so that people can get an idea what we are talking about here?
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, and as Patrick pointed out, we were just brainstorming around some ideas wherein the way Prow is currently displaying the status of Prow jobs on GitHub, we could probably have some convention wherein if you want to pass on some logs from the Prow job failures, then you put them with some naming convention in the artifacts directory. And then at that time, we were, I remember Antonio, Patrick, and I were brainstorming on something like Crier may, pick them up and populate GitHub comments with, the failures, which are difficult to read. So this was something that we were brainstorming on. I don't have anything working as of now. I couldn't find some bandwidth a few weeks ago, but I can see that I'll be able to give some more time to it in the coming weeks. So this is like the approach that we decided to take on. So I think we need to identify the next step. So should we come up with like a design doc or something which we can present?
Yeah, in general, having a design would be great. The basic approach of we dump a file in the artifact and Quire reports it, I think should work. One thing I'm noticing though, Patrick in one of these comments mentioned that they want to use output produced in GitHub Actions format. And GitHub Actions format means that it has to be reported as a GitHub check run, which you can only do if you have a GitHub app which power.kto currently is not. Yeah, just something to keep in
So
mind, I
yeah,
guess.
we haven't settled on the format for that file that we are storing it as an artifact. That's one of the things that we need to investigate. I just noticed that Golang CI lint has something that the GitHub action for Golang CI lint is using, and I do not know whether that format that is in that text output actually is something that has a formal description or anything. That's really an implementation detail that where we probably need to prototype a bit and see what's most suitable as the API between a Prow job and this new feature in Cryer. It could also be some other format.
The biggest concern I have here is if the tool that is producing the format runs in pre-submit and runs it with code from the repo, and then we'll hook up comment permission abuse. But it seems like if we do the commenting completely outside of it by integrating it into Prow with this feature, then I guess you can only spam your own PR. Is that the intent? Okay,
That's the intent.
yeah.
And
Because previously
we
people
can
tried. Sorry, just super quick. So people previously tried to do this by just like, oh, we'll add like a account to the Prow job, and that's kind of a big nope.
Yeah, we noticed that. We discussed that, I think, already on Slack. But we can also do some rate limiting or maximum number of comments. So if there is a runaway Prow job, that even though the damage is limited to the PR itself, we can limit the number of comments easily to something that is sane.
Yeah, I think the biggest concerns are the rate limit and security, with the rate limit being the much more realistic one. So if there's a throttling mechanism there, we should probably also have some mechanism for this to be for jobs to opt into this in their spec. I'm not sure if that's included in it. So either supplying a Prow job label that indicates that we should look for this, or is the idea to actually try to scrape this information from every job that runs?
I guess we could turn it on for everyone because the name would be special, and if we pick something that's fairly unique and unlikely to be created by accident by an existing Prow job, then creating that file is basically the opt-in mechanism for this new feature.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's potential for abuse by that, because then a pre-submit could be made to, somebody could modify their pre-submit to create the file when it was not originally intended for that job to be capable of commenting.
Yeah, one interesting abuse thing is I think we should probably just like super binary throw this out. I think we should probably scope this to a different robot account than we use, like the triage account or something. So that if you manage to like trigger GitHub's abuse mechanism or something, it is that blast radius isn't on the like main CI account. I could imagine someone just like posting a bunch of comments that are intended to get flagged or something. But I think we're like fairly okay there as long as it's as long as we move this to a separate account.
Yeah, we have a few accounts that we might be able to reuse for that, but we might want a new one. We definitely shouldn't use Kate's CI robot.
Yeah, like that's the worst thing I can imagine off the top of my head happening, and it would be really unfortunate on Kate's CI robot. But as long as it's a dedicated, like as long as it's a separate one than that, I think that's not super likely. And if it does happen, we like get through it. Rajas, you want to go?
Yeah. So should we go for a new account or should we use the triage bot account?
I'm not sure yet, but I think we can probably discuss that further later. I think it's more like because we know we can do something like that, we know that we shouldn't need to get blocked on that abuse concern, but because we could just isolate the account. We didn't really, I think we skimmed past this, but you mentioned the GitHub Actions format. That actually seems like a good idea to me because it might make it so that people don't have to write more tools to like emit Prow format. if there's just like a flag we can turn on in tools, if that's becoming a widespread thing, picking up that support for free seems really nice.
Would it, from an organizational point of view, be easy to set up a new GitHub app in the Kubernetes 6 organization just for this? Because then it could actually create check runs and do this commenting.
That seems like a really good thing for us to bring to the GitHub admin team. I imagine they would be supportive of that, but I can't say for certain. There's a channel in Slack, folks, GitHub admin, I believe. It's a subgroup of SIG-Contrabex that manages the like GitHub accounts and everything. If we're making new robot accounts, we should probably be making them under the GitHub, like the community GitHub team. Arno's with us in the comments and +1.
Awesome. All right. It sounds like there's some good action around here and potentially some action items to take. Is there anything else that folks want to discuss on this topic? All right, sounds good. I think we're good there. There's nothing else listed on the agenda right now, but does anybody have any last minute things that they want to discuss here while we're here? Yeah.
Hi, I have a question about onboarding Bread cluster not part of GCP. Do we have a process for that? My understanding is you need to have, we only consider GCP GK cluster because we have GenCred, but if some entity want to onboard Bread cluster not part of GCP in Pro, do we have a process for that?
I'm not sure if we have a process for it, but it should be possible. The GenCreds thing is for rotating our kubeconfig credentials that we use to connect. We need that for some of the policies that we have on our GKE clusters, but that wouldn't necessarily apply to another cloud. And we would just have a separate kubeconfig file for that, but we can combine those kubeconfig files in our deployment configuration. So yeah, there's no stop there.
And their kubeconfig format, so like the output of the GenCred tool, so like that standards compliant. It's just a utility for rotating the kubeconfigs we use.
Yeah, basically, if you can supply a kubeconfig to the Prow service cluster, it can treat it like a build cluster.
Depending on what you're using it for, if it's like, if we try to do this for Kubernetes, there's like some like additional considerations around like assumptions that the jobs can make for things we've done in the cluster. Like we have some daemon sets deployed to like bump up syscuttles and things like that, or like dev loop devices pre-allocated. We have a couple of little like hacks that we deployed to the cluster to make CI run smoothly.
The context of my question is related to IBM, some job running on some to set up a Bread cluster inside IBM, and just that's why I'm asking this question. Bread cluster is owned by them. I give them the flexibility to do those custom configuration, and it's only going to be for pro job target for stuff like cluster API provider or specific pro jobs target for a specific architecture. Because there was a proposal to integrate Boscos and running that in on the GK cluster, but I feel like we should just give them the possibility to provide the kube config for a Bread cluster inside IBM.
I don't think we have any technical blockers. I think rotation is something to have on the radar, and just those like other things I mentioned are more like if someone wants to know, we can point them to that, just because we don't have a process right now, but we kind of have one for the GKE clusters. But it should pretty much just be a kube config and whatever they want to do with it.
There are a couple things that I can think of that could be a little interesting. Presumably they would still be using GCS to store the job results. If they're, yeah, we need to figure out kind of how the credentials would work for that, I guess. Some of the constraints that the policy constraints we have for our projects might apply.
We can support more buckets, right? So if they got some kind of S3 compatible bucket running, we could probably get Prow and Test Grid point at that as like a bucket just for those jobs.
Yeah, I'm thinking if this gets set up though, it might be better to set it up on the Kate's Infra Prow instance rather than Kate's Prow, if possible. There's probably fewer policy constraints there.
Okay, I will try to follow Slack about this because I didn't think about credential for the service account responsible to upload the build logs. I will try to follow up on Slack.
And just from our past experience and how we wound up with GenCred, you probably want to plan up front for like, how are you going to handle rotating the kube config credentials eventually?
Okay.
All right, cool. Anything more on this topic? All right. Anybody else have any other items that they want to discuss now? All right. I think I'll let everyone go then. Thanks everybody. A lot of good discussion. A lot of follow-ups to do, but awesome.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
y'all.
Thanks all. Have a happy
Take
Tuesday.
care.
Thank you.